Taken over by a stronger nation, then we say that in that case, other stronger nations should help that weaker nation because it has been unjustly oppressed and violence has been committed against the people. Yes, so this is something that we see even today. Take the example of Gaza today.
But in every war, then there will always be someone who will say that their violence is justified.
Yeah, if they say it themselves, then that is subjective. But if you collectively say, for example, if the world collectively says that a certain group of people need to be annihilated, then that would be committing a genocide. And this is something we as human beings cannot accept as being right. Doesn't matter what they say. They can say what they want. But you see, the morals which we get from is from the Quran as we take our injunctions from there. So if somebody says it's okay to genocide, the Quran is telling you, no, that is wrong, then I go with the Quran.
In you as well is saying, no, that is wrong.
Exactly. This is called the fitrah. This is called your natural disposition, because you as a human being, you look like a person who is generous, kind, good overall, but you have this innate nature of yours, which tells you when something is right or something is wrong. This is inbuilt in every one of us. Only certain times when you keep doing that evil, keep doing something bad, even a bad habit, for example, smoking or drinking, initially you will feel bad. You know, when you started drinking, I don't know about you, but there are people when they started drinking, initially, they felt bad. When they started smoke, they felt guilty. Yes? But once they get into that habit and they become addicted to it, that guilt goes away. Similarly, there are people out there who commit atrocities, and this is a repeat offense. You see many times repeat rapists. They've been to jail, they had all that punishment, they come out of jail and do the same thing again. Because you have become now, immune to that, which we have this innate nature of differentiating between good and bad. They've become immune to that because the heart has become blackened. It's become hard.
What's it called again?
It's called fitrah, the innate nature. But actual fitrah means you will steer towards belief in the oneness of God. So even if you're a child, they've conducted experiments with children, who have been not indoctrinated by the society. They steer towards belief in one God. And there are studies about this from, I believe, from Cambridge or Oxford, where they have conducted this kind of experiments. So I think
we're talking about truth.
Yeah.
And we said
truth is free from contradiction. I want to get back to that. Yeah.
And
what would you say to that statement?
Well, I'm wondering because there are many aspects to God, but I would say I'm highlighting two main ones.
Okay, go on.
One of them is that God is extremely impersonal. It is just
He doesn't care?
It's just that.
Are you saying God doesn't care?
Wait.
Yeah.
So on one level, it's just what is. It's just the reality of everything that it is as it is, and there's not, like when you look sometimes at the stars and you see it's so big and you're so small, you can notice just how small. In the Quran they have something with the ring, and you put the ring in the desert.
Oh, very nice. You heard that hadith, mashallah. I'm impressed actually.
Well, it's only because someone come to me and talked to me.
Yeah, that's good.
So, and then in that, and so this is trying to show how just infinite God is. So it's so
vast,
so vast that it's not worried about my shoelaces on one level. Yes, it's not worried about this. And then the other side of it.
So is it okay if you step a bit back because I think they don't want to record you; they want to record me.
The only side.
Because you said not to. Yeah, no problem.
The only side of it.
Yeah.
That's something that I'd be very happy to talk about, by the way. About why I'm not being recorded. Well, why I prefer not to be recorded.
That's fine.
But the other side of it is that it's incredibly personal in that when you are praying, and anyone when they are praying, can have a direct relationship to God straight away like that. So at the same time, it is vast, like we cannot understand vast. And absolute, and at the same time, it is exactly personal just to me.
Okay. I see a clear contradiction in that. And I think you do as well. That's why you brought this point up, isn't it? If God is not personal, and He's impersonal, and He's distant, and He doesn't care what's happening in the world, does He love you? You talked about love earlier. Does he love you?
Well, that's the thing, is that I think there is a type of love that is to just let things be.
No, that's not love. I'm sorry. If you think let things be, so if somebody's suffering, let it be. Let him suffer.
There is one way, in the way this is represented on earth currently, in that God does just not come and stop a war.
No, hold on. See, again, we are conflating two different things. One is being distant. You don't care at all what's happening in the world. Another is him not interfering in the affairs of human beings until he wills. So God has a will. His will presides over all of us. Everything that we do, it is because of the will of Allah. You see these leaves moving? Not a single leaf will move unless Allah wills it. Yes? So he still allows it. However, if he wanted, he could have stopped it, if he wanted. Yes? But, you see, when you said God is distant and God doesn't care what's happening in the world, I don't think that's true.
But okay, but at the same time I said it was personal and it very much cares. I changed my words because again, it's words is the problem, not really the understanding.
Consistency is what we need.
So it's interference and non-interference, let's say.
Yeah, that's a different aspect.
And then, then these two things arise at the same exact time. In truth, that truth is that's one of the names of God, we said. So I call it truth.
Al-Haq, yeah.
So in truth, there is interference comes up, and there is non-interference comes up simultaneously.
But that's got nothing to do with the truth of God's truth. God, of course, what he says is the truth. What he does is the truth. However, if he kept interfering, let me give you an analogy. Maybe you'll understand better, okay, with the analogy, because I like analogies. They put complex things into simpler form for everyone to understand. You've been to school. You sat at a test or an examination, right? Your whole year you spent, and this is your final exam. This is a decision that's going to be made based on your hard work, based on the result of your examination, whether you go to the next class or you graduate or not. Yes? Would you expect your teacher to interfere when you're doing something right or wrong? Why is that?
Because otherwise it wouldn't be from my work.
It wouldn't be a test. See what I mean? It wouldn't be your test. The whole idea of giving you a test is to see your ability and your capacity as to where you stand in comparison to the other students. Yeah, that is the reason for the test, and that you graduate to the next level if you pass. If you fail, then you continue with the test or whatever it is, whatever the process is of the school. If God interfered at every single aspect of our life, let's say you've done something wrong, immediately, boom, comes the result of whatever you do. So if somebody, let's say, murders, lightning bolt, he collapses and he dies. Now, that wouldn't be something which God would do. Yes, he wouldn't interfere at every aspect of your life, because it would then negate the purpose of this test. By the way, us in this world, we are in a big test until we die. Every day of our life is a test. What is God testing you? Whether you're abiding by his injunctions, whether you're abiding by his recommendations, by the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, all of this is something that we are being tested on. For example, in Islam, if you go to bed with a full stomach, and your neighbor, even if your neighbor is an atheist who doesn't believe in God or might be a Hindu, if he goes to sleep empty stomach and you go to sleep with a full stomach, you're not from the deen, you're not a Muslim. That is the injunction of Allah, because Allah is not only saying be nice to yourself and your fellow Muslims or something, he's saying be nice to everyone. If there's something in the road that's blocking the path, you move that and you'll get hasanat for that. You'll get rewarded for that. If you feed your neighbor who is hungry, you get rewarded for that. Every single aspect of our life, we get rewarded for it. But what I was coming to with regards to the contradiction in the truth is that when people have different religions and they see God as different ways, yes, we see clear contradictions. If everyone saw the same thing, then we would be one religion, wouldn't we? The fact that we have different religions is because we consider, when I say we, the human beings consider God in different ways based on their ideology or perspective.
But it's like there's different languages, there's different cultures,
Yes.
It would be so boring and not rich if we made everyone speak the same language.
Yeah, but that's not true.
If we made everyone have the same cultural customs and everything. It would be
Boring,
like
yeah.
having one flower
Yeah.
instead of having all these different types of flowers.
That's right.
So we have in the beliefs we have all these different types of flowers,
Yeah.
and as long as they lead to the qualities of generosity, of purity, of love, of like of sharing with your neighbor, of patience, of transcendental knowledge, as long as they lead to I don't know, whatever humility. There are lots of as long as they lead to godly qualities, as long as they lead to you living a life where you are in line with like spirit or what moves us or infinite love.
Yeah.
Then they are welcome. If we make it all, imagine we say, and I think that actually the English tried to do this when they. In the past, they colonized. I wasn't alive, but they colonized lots of the world. So
not just the English.
Should be like us.
Not just the English.
No, also,
the Europeans.
Yeah.
I know you're from France.
Yes.
Maybe you don't like the English,
Also
but it wasn't just the English. Trust me.
The
it was the Europeans, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish.
Ah.
Yeah, all these were
and
culprits
we
to
are
that.
Right. They were, and
they were not right.
And this were.
They claimed
no.
to be. Yeah, they claimed to be right, but they were not right.
You said all was culprits, and I said they were culprits.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, so they all said we have the right way. They did not.
They did not, yeah.
They said we have the right way, and we're going to show you the right way.
Yeah.
What a sad life.
They wanted to make them like themselves, but they look down upon people just because they are a different skin tone.
And because different beliefs.
And different beliefs and different languages and different yes. But you see, in Islam, we don't have that. Fortunately, unlike what you are. I don't know what you're thinking about. Islam never discourages your culture. You see, I come from Asia. I still eat Asian food. Doesn't make me a non-Muslim. I don't need to eat Arab food to become a Muslim. I enjoy Arab food and I enjoy Asian food and I enjoy different cuisines. Not much of French, maybe. I don't know. I don't like the snails. Trust me. So escargot, what do you call it? Escargot. Sorry, I remember slightly what the name is. So yeah, Islam doesn't discourage you as long as you're not going against God. For example, if the English dine on pork, for us pork is haram. It's something that we don't do. So as long as it doesn't go against the religion, as long as you're not going against the Quran and the Sunnah, then it's fine. Enjoy your culture. You see, I don't know if you've seen the Hajj recently. You know, the pilgrimage which happens every year in this month of Zul Hijjah. You see people from all different backgrounds, or all different colors, all different cultures and languages, united in one place, wearing the same clothes, to show the unity. But they still have different colors, different languages, different cultures. And this is the beauty, Islam unites it. Without taking away your culture, it unites you in a single unit as Muslims. Not that it's going to say, okay, you're not an Arab, you're not a Muslim. No, in fact, the Arabs are actually a minority. Do you know that? Amongst the Muslims. They are only 20%. The majority are non-Arabs. Yes, 80% of Muslims are non-Arabs, or even more.
And this diversity is wonderful.
It's something which is celebrated in Islam. The diversity is celebrated. The only thing which is not celebrated if you go against the injunctions of the Quran and Sunnah.
So you talked, for example, about eating the pig. And for me, very
pork. We call it pork, yeah.
To understand, pork is from the pig.
Yes. But you don't say eating the pig, you say eating the pork.
I say for the animals, if someone says beef, I say cow, to remember.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
That's good, okay, no problem.
So if we are doing a practice, whether it's not eating pork or not putting on jewelry or something, it's very important to understand why we have this ritual.
Absolutely.
And so it's for what I've noticed. I have a friend who is working in a butchery place.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you're not a vegan, are you?
No.
You're not. You vegetarian? Do you eat meat?
At the moment, because I depend on people for food, I accept what they give me.
Oh, what do you mean you depend on people for food? Are you some sort of a monk?
I just live my life that I depend on.
You're a monk.
You're a monk.
Are you a monk? No, seriously. Are you a monk?
I meditate and walk and
okay.
pray.
Well, you like Buddhism or something? Which ideology do you follow? Brother, you're blocking the camera.
I've been inspired by, so I've read the Quran, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, the shorter version, I've read, I think, most of the Bible, but that was from childhood anyway. Had lots
Right.
of stories from it. I've read lots of different
Yeah.
books.
You read the Quran, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I read it very seriously.
Nice.
And I've read Buddhist texts, and I found that the specifically about suffering, what they talk about Buddhism and suffering, I
In
found
Buddhism?
very interesting.
In
Yeah,
Buddhism,
they have like
yeah.
4 points about suffering. Called the Four Noble Truths. I find that very interesting to follow in my meditation, because it's not saying you have to believe this or not. Like, it's just, you have some suffering in your life. I have
So what are the 4 points?
the first point is that there is suffering.
Yes, we know that.
Then that there is an origin of suffering, which is hanging on to desire. And then that there is a way out of, like an end of suffering, where you let go of this, like the habits you were talking about, or the desires that stop you. There's an end of suffering. And the fourth one, that there is a way out of suffering, which involves wisdom, morality, and concentration.
Okay. Sorry, when you say end of suffering would be death, at least in this world.
So that can be an understanding, but I think when you're alive, you can be totally at peace and still have lots of pain, but not suffer.
Yeah, but pain is part of suffering.
I think suffering
You
is
cannot-
how you take pain. So,
Yeah, but you can handle the pain, but it's still suffering. So, for example, maybe your threshold is higher for pain, but if you are in pain, then that is still suffering.
for example, you lose somebody that you love, they die.
Yeah.
Maybe because of your personal relationship to what is, you don't decide, but you can let your grief go, because you think, now my mother or my inshallah, now
you get
my
over it.
friend, they are happy because they are where they are, and they are closer to our source. So you get over it, you let go, you are at peace. Somebody else, they lose their loved one, but they do not have
I see what you mean. Hanging on to the grief.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that is one way of. It is how you manage grief, I guess.
Yes.
Different people manage it different ways. I understand, but still, because when you said end of suffering, I meant all your life, not just letting go of one grief. Because you see, it doesn't matter how good a person you are, how devoted to God you are,
Oh, you
how
have
much
pain the whole life,
exactly,
yeah.
how much you meditate. So this is something that we see as part of your life. Is you'll have ups and downs.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you can be at peace within yourself with the ups and downs. So everything can be a disaster.
Yeah.
Your hand can be cut off tomorrow. Everybody, as long as they're alive, they can have quite big pain.
Yeah.
But how you are with that cutting
How you
off the
deal with
hand
it, yeah.
is very different.
Absolutely.
So that's just
Yeah. And what was the last point? The fourth one?
The fourth one is that there's a way out of suffering, and the way is, so the third was just that the suffering ends.
Yeah, but we qualified that, but let's move on. Yeah.
So the fourth one is the way out of suffering, which is with wisdom, morality, and concentration.
Right. Who decides what's moral or immoral?
No, so.
Is it subjective or is it objective?
Well, do you know this thing you talked about?
Yeah, the fitra.
The fita. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is in us. That is a good indicator. If you've lost your fitra for some reason,
Fitra.
fitra,
Yeah.
then you can sometimes, if you imagine you have like a 3-year-old holding their hand or so, it's useful to be a parent actually, I imagine. I'm not a parent
Okay.
physically.
I am actually, so I know.
So maybe it's useful to have children, because you can see through their eyes and you think,
Yeah.
even if you cannot find your fitra, you see, this is not quite right for
But
my child.
would you say it's subjective? For example, good and bad is subjective for people, is it? What might be good for you might be bad for someone else.
But if you consider the whole of life, so it's
Earlier I asked you if you were a vegan or vegetarian. So a vegan and vegetarian, they would be completely frowning upon anyone who eats meat.
Yes.
Yeah? So
I have been vegetarian like 10 years in my life.
I know, but you still eat meat, don't
Now I
you?
eat meat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So someone who looks at your lifestyle and your dietary habits, they're going to be appalled by it. You see what I mean? So what is good for you right now, because you need nutrition, might be completely different to another person's view who is against your lifestyle and the way you consume your food. That's why I'm saying, look, if things are subjective, then humanity will always be divided, isn't it?
But
Because
for example, this is dividing humanity now because you're saying, okay, he's the son of God, he's not the son of God. I don't think at all this is the problem because we have to come into ourselves and find our own relationship with it, and then whatever happens, other people believe, it doesn't so much matter. But that's the divide.
so you're saying the same thing. You're saying the same thing because what you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is my subjective view. I'm going to stick to my ideology, and I'm going to live my life. But what you're doing, just like your dietary needs.
Not stick, because
Sorry, is it okay if we go a bit distant because I think it's trying to not capture you in the video?
I'm not trying to stick to anything. I'm trying.
You're sticking to your ideology.
But for example, I told you I was vegetarian before.
No, I'm talking about vegetarian. I'm talking about your beliefs. Your beliefs.
But my belief was that killing animals bad, and then it evolved.
No, I'm talking about your beliefs in God.
This is because of my belief.
Yeah, because earlier you said that God does nothing. Remember? Now that is your belief.
I said both.
But that would be contradiction, and it can't be the truth.
That's why I was saying that for me, both of them are true at the same time.
Truth cannot be contradictory. I'm sorry.
But
I respectfully disagree, because if anyone tells me that someone who is good is also evil, then the person doesn't know neither good nor evil.
You yourself told me that somebody can be good and do some evil.
No, I'm talking about God. In the context of God. If you're saying God is good, can God be evil?
Okay, but how do you do it in the context of people? You said some people can be good, but they have a good person. You said good person, but they can do evil actions. So what is the tipping point where they have this much good, but that much evil? So it's okay, we call them good person, but now we call them that much bad, that much good. We call them bad.
Yeah,
person.
I think, look, this is something which is not really a problem, because when you see someone living a gangster lifestyle, and someone like a nun, for example, yes. I don't need to go and investigate their entire life to tell me who's good and who's bad. See what I mean? Some things are, obvious. So normally you would judge a person by their actions or by their words. See what I mean? You cannot know what's in the heart. Leave that for God to judge. We, as human beings, we judge by the apparent. What we can see, we are going to judge based on that. So if someone is, for example, tells me that, they live a lifestyle of a nun, yes, during the day, but then when I see them at night, they might be going to a nightclub. You see what I mean? Then I will say that person's lifestyle is contradictory to their ideology. So we can only judge by the apparent, we cannot. But you see, God is different. God tells us who He is. We don't just imagine what God is.
I think in the Quran, they say God is closer to me than
Your jugular vein.
Than my skin.
Your jugular vein.
My jugular.
Yeah, which means by knowledge. Okay, so we don't believe that God actually is there. See what I mean? This is something by knowledge. That means God has knowledge of everything. In fact, there's a hadith which says the darkest night, in the darkest pit, in the blackest ant. Ah, good. You heard about that, mashallah. So yeah, this is, Allah knows even what that ant is doing or saying. Yes. So we as people, we judge other people based on their actions and their words. We then say, okay, I can, if Allah tells me that who He is. And then another, for example, Bhagavad Gita. Yes, take Krishna for example. Krishna, when he told Arjuna, Arjuna was hesitating to go to war with his cousins, the Kauravas. You remember that? I don't know if you remember it in your simplistic version. Yeah, because you said you read an abridged version of the Bhagavad Gita. But Bhagavad Gita is basically a dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna. Krishna is supposed to be this god of the Hindus. And when Arjuna was hesitating, because he was a good guy, maybe like you, he doesn't like to harm people, and especially his own cousins. And he was reluctant to go to war with him. You know what Krishna tells him? That it is your dharma, it is your duty as a Kshatriya, because he's from the warrior class, to take this war. Because here, remember I told you about the just war earlier? It's between the good and the evil. So when there's a just war, certain wars are justified. Yes, when there is oppression, when there is injustice, then those kind of wars, if you want to get rid of injustice and oppression, sometimes you have to go to war, unfortunately.
And you said that, and then you gave the example of...
Yeah, sorry, just let me finish this point about Arjuna. So when Arjuna was reluctant, Krishna told him, it is your dharma, it is your duty to go to war. So you see what I mean? Even within Hinduism, when they don't believe, most Hindus today want to be vegans and vegetarians. Yes? But here Krishna is actually justifying killing of human beings. And this is related to the Mahabharata war. You heard of Mahabharata? Mahabharata. So it is basically one of the epics within Hinduism. They got two epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Both of them has war in it. Yes, both of them justify the war. In the case of Mahabharata, some Hindus say more than 4 million people died. And by the way, there were no conquerors at this time, so no outsiders. These are Hindus fighting each other. 4 million of them massacred each other like savages. So even vegetarians and vegans go to war. You see what I mean? This is the world we live in. But coming back to the principle of non-contradiction, you cannot say God is evil even if he gives you the instruction to go to war. You know why? Because that war he's instructed you is something which is justified in that scenario. How else?
If 4 million people die.
No, I'm not talking about Mahabharata. Sorry, I'm not talking about that.
Imagine.
I'm giving you a general view about a war. For example, if there is a small nation which has been oppressed by a larger nation, more powerful nation, as we see in Gaza today, you know, being massacred and genocide and all that, yes, then it is justified in the case of God, because God, if you look at the Old Testament, which was given to the Jews, they were instructed to massacre the Canaanites. See what I mean? So justified wars were always there, but sometimes these wars were not really justified. Sometimes they would attribute this saying, oh, God told us to go and fight a war, when it was their own desire to go and fight a war because of their own benefits or whatever. But what I'm saying is that in the case of God, you cannot say that he's someone who is evil, because this war which you're saying is actually stopping the evil. What is the evil here? When a larger nation oppresses a smaller nation and commits evil against them, killing their women and children left and right with impunity, then God would intervene in such cases, and he would instruct people who follow him to go and rescue that nation. And this is what we see in the Old Testament all the time. Yeah.
In the wars, we are using bombs, and we are using like lots of different weapons and lots of and our own bodies to hurt other people. No?
Yeah.
But we're using, like, we take the earth as if it's just for us to take.
How else will you stop someone like Hitler, who's coming to annihilate France and Britain?
Me personally,
Yes, what would you do when Hitler was here
get on my knees and I would pray and I would say, please,
and he would shoot you in the head? Then what would you do? The nation is still suffering.
I would be at peace with myself because I give all of my best. And how do you know he would shoot me? Because who I would be asking
Because he
for
did.
protection would be love.
No, he did actually.
And if he did, then I would at least be in line with what
I don't think you understand the thinking of a dictator. I don't think you understand it, because
you asked.
if
I
he
didn't say what was right or wrong. I
no
said
no no
what I
but would you actually agree with the millions of people that he killed? You wouldn't agree, would you?
I don't think that.
Why do you
we
think-
need to kill each other?
No, I agree. We don't need to. That is why I gave you that ayah from chapter 5, verse 32. That if you kill one man unjustly, it is as if you kill the whole of mankind. But then there are evil people like Hitler who would commit atrocities, and that is the reason all the Europeans marched against him, and the Russians. They marched against him to get rid of that evil. Because if you let him continue his way, then he would have massacred a lot more people. How else? You know, you can't just look. Sometimes you cannot rationalize with people who are irrational.
If someone is in front of me, right? If
Yeah.
someone is in front of me and they are actively hurting somebody, I can interfere as much as I can. Maybe I get killed, but I can interfere.
When you interfere, you mean you would use force? Okay, that's exactly what I'm saying. So you're agreeing with me?
Not entirely.
I'm not saying
Depends on
unjustly.
how and what
Yeah.
and why.
Look, I'm not saying you just go and to war for no reason. I'm saying that's why I said just war is something that we have to take into account as a last resort. So if you have completed all the negotiations, you know, talking about love, talking about empathy, once you have done all that, and they still go on massacring and killing people, then, like you rightly said, sometimes force is necessary. And this is what we have seen throughout human history. There have been dictators, there have been people who were massacred. But the thing is, if nobody stops them, they go on killing. For us, the right thing to do would be, if you have the power, then you stop them. And this is also from the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. He told us there are 3 ways you can actually, go about doing something when you see something wrong. So if you see something wrong or evil, you stop it with your hand. That means with your power, with your ability, physically. If you cannot do that, that means you don't have that ability. Then you speak out against it. So you do it with your tongue. And if you still can't do that, then the least of the iman is that at least you consider it bad in your heart. Because to acknowledge evil is the first step. If you do not acknowledge it, then it loses all meaning of good and evil. And that's why I said, when you speak in the context of God, and you cannot say he is good and evil at the same time, because that would be against what we call as, the law of non-contradiction. If God is good, then you cannot say he's evil. He will instruct you about things which may seem wrong, but in reality, that is the way God does justice to the people who are being harmed, the smaller nation or the weaker nation. So he would tell people to go to war against this stronger nation to rescue the people who are weak.
It's all of the exact moment that person relationship with their fitra, and that exact moment where they decide what to do. It's all, it has to be exactly in that moment decided. I think
that is a subjective look. This is where we have been before. So fitra is basically you recognizing God is one. By that you obey God, you're trying to. But good and bad, ultimately the morality, the standards of morality, the only objective standards of morality can only come from God. Because human beings will always disagree.
You're going to hear that somehow.
What do you mean?
Well, the Quran is written a while ago, so it will not treat on a particular war that is happening now. So you have to make decisions on a conflict that is happening now, and you will do that somehow to hear what you feel is God. So how do you hear the will?
Revelation. We have been given the Quran as a revelation. It's a very good question, actually.
But for example, specifically with a certain conflict, you're talking about...
No. Look, for example, when you go to college or university, you are taught certain principles, whether it's in economics or it's medical or you take history, whatever. So you're given general knowledge about certain things. And then you decide in your life how you're going to actually carry on that. Similarly, God has given us all the instructions and injunctions about how to go about your daily life in the Quran and in the Sunnah. These are the principles you'll face on a daily basis or maybe in your life or something. And we always go back to the Quran and Sunnah, take our teachings from there. But if you are going to be all the time depending on your own subjective understanding, then it will always, if I were to ask you, have you ever been wrong in your life? I have as well. Yes? Have you sinned? You have, and I have too.
Today we have both.
Yeah, but God, you see, God is never going to be wrong. So whatever injunctions he gives you is going to be something which is going to be true and accurate, and it is the best advice. He created us all, so who knows us better than God? Nobody else.
And you see, there's one of my friends called Ali. He was brought up in Egypt, and he had a Christian part of his school and a Muslim part of his school. And he would go to the Muslim class, and his friends would go to the Christian class.
Yeah. Can I have some water, please? Thank you. Check.
And they would say,
he always helps me with water, this gentleman. You want a bottle as well?
I've got water.
Yeah. Careful. It's going to fall? All right. So I don't want to be distracted. Is it okay if you hold it quickly? Because it'll cover the cameras otherwise, yeah. Okay. Where were we?
There's a wonderful quote about flags that I like. That's just...
wonderful, sorry. What about flags?
A quote about flags. A quote about flags.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
It says, flags are first used to shrink wrap people's minds, then as ceremonial shrouds to bury the dead.
Very nice, I like that.
It's by Arundhati Roy. I put it there. Yeah. But I was saying about Ali, and him and his friend, he had a good friend he would play sports or something with, and they would go in a separate, this is the Muslim class, this is the Christian class, and they would see each other afterwards. And one day, after a long time of being in the class, Ali would come to his friend and he said, look man, you've got to change to Muslim religion, because otherwise you're going to go to hell, and I want to be, when I go to heaven, I want to be there with you. Like, he was really sad, really concerned. And his friend said, no man, I was about to ask you, like, I need you to change to the Christian religion because otherwise,
Thank you very much.
like, you're going to go to hell and I won't be there with you and this will not be good. Like, I want you to come.
Yeah.
So we have these
Is it
books.
okay? We have some distance, please. Yeah. Thank you. Just over here.
One
Is
person,
it-
one
yeah.
person has a book.
Thank you.
One
You sure you don't want?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
One person has a book, other person has a book. They read from it. They say, "This is how I go to heaven." Other person says, "This is how I go to heaven," and they say, "Ah, you." They both point at each other and say, "You will go to hell." Ah, you will go to hell.
Yeah.
And
They will say that. That's because they are different religions.
they are different religions.
Yes.
And the war itself, like, there are very many political reasons, but they are linked with religious reasons. The books themselves that the people follow make them feel like they have a right to a certain land, right?
Sorry, they have a right to
a certain land.
a certain.
Land. So one book will say Jerusalem is a very good
Oh,
place
land.
for the
Okay, I
people
see. Okay.
A land, L-A-N-D.
Yeah.
And then another, and the people that are there are like, okay, but we were there. Why are you coming from this book? So the different belief systems that were handed from little can then create situations of deep oppression where people are like exactly now, where people, because they followed this particular teaching, they believe they have a certain right, and then other people say, no, you're wrong.